Welcome back everybody, I'm JarToon, your host, and today I'm going to react to a video called The Entire Story of Batman Beyond in 41 minutes. Now for new updates and content, you can visit the links in the description down below, and let's get started. Enjoy.
Good evening, folks. If you can't tell by that intro, today we are talking Batman. But this isn't your average Batman. In fact, that intro is probably far too cheery for this Batman. Today we're talking about Batman Beyond. Set in Neo-Gotham, aka Gotham in the future, Batman Beyond is a much darker take on the series than usual, and much more layered as well. So buckle into your Batmobiles and deepen those voices. Today we're recapping the entirety of Batman Beyond from beginning to end. Here we go.
This is one of my favorite cartoons of all time.
To start off, we gotta introduce some main characters so you know what's what. To begin, we have Terry, a 17-year-old high school boy who ends up hitting the jackpot after discovering Batman's secret identity. It's Bruce Wayne. And believe it or not, Terry somehow convinces Bruce to let him be the next Batman. Then of course we've got Bruce, who needs no explanation. He's Batman. Or, I guess, he was Batman. We've got Dana, Terry's girlfriend, who worries a lot about him. Particularly about their relationship, might I add. And finally, for the good guys, we've got Max, one of Terry and Dana's mutual friends, who finds out Terry's secret and helps him occasionally. Now for villains, we've got Paxton Powers, who we'll get into later, but he ends up being quite a handful. He's the son of Derek Powers, the guy who kept trying to bite a chunk out of Wayne Enterprises. We've also got the Royal Flush Gang, which includes 10, or better known as Melanie, who becomes a confusing love interest for Terry later. Alright, you got all that? Good. Let's get started. Before I officially begin, I would like for it to be known that once Terry is introduced, every time I reference Batman, I'm talking about Terry in the Batsuit, not Bruce Wayne. The first episode starts off strong with a two-parter, and kicks off with a solemn revelation. It all begins with the audience getting a glimpse of the drama behind the scenes, as on the news, they mentioned how Derek Powers is trying to take over Wayne Enterprises, but was just down due to Bruce Wayne's resistance. Meanwhile, Batman is seen fighting crime as per usual. However, he's much more sluggish than normal. It gets to the point where his chest is hurting and he isn't able to counter the bad guy's moves as well as he should. Eventually, he ends up having a heart attack and falling victim to his pursuers. And in his last hope, he reaches for a pistol. The attackers, well aware of his vow to never use lethal weapons, are extremely scared by this, and they run away. Once again, Batman realizes what he's done, and he vows never again. The prologue ends with a sad scene as Batman decides he's too old for crime fighting, and the curtains close on his Batcave. Part 1 begins 20 years after our last scene of Bruce ending his Batman chapter. That's an insane amount of time for Gotham to be without a Batman. It's also revealed that Derek Powers did indeed take over Wayne Enterprises and is now monopolizing the town. The scene cuts to somebody dressed up as a clown terrorizing people in an elevator, and are then properly introduced to Terry McGinnis for the first time, as he shuts the clown down and utters "Jokers," implying that there's more of them and that they're a common occurrence around town. At school that day, Terry gets into a fight with a classmate, and his father, Warren, grounds him when he gets home. Warren gets a message from his coworker that he has something urgent for him. And in a meeting with his said coworker, he's given a disc, and is then dragged away by a large scary man named Fix, who works for Derek Powers. Powers then summons Warren to his office, where he explains that his coworker just had an accident, but he'll be fine. He also asks Warren if he was given anything by his coworker, but Warren denies everything about that, as he's scared of being dragged away too. Once back at the house, he watches the disc and gets extremely distraught about whatever he saw, and is even more on edge than before. During this time, Terry goes against his father's wishes of being grounded and sneaks out to go to a club. At the nightclub, we're introduced to Terry's girlfriend, Dana Tan. But before much can happen, a group of jokers appear and wreak havoc at the party.
Stop!
Hands off, Dreg!
Terry runs away and falls when he moves out of the way of an old man who just so happens to be Bruce Wayne. The Jokers advance on Terry and Bruce, but the two of them are eventually able to fend them off. However, Bruce has trouble because of his weak heart, and Terry takes him back to his manor. While there, Terry notices a bat stuck in Bruce's clock and decides to set it free. However, in doing so, he discovers the secret entrance to the Batcave. Batman tackles Terry to the ground and demands that he leave his house immediately, so he does. Once arriving home, Terry finds his home in shambles with graffiti on the walls. What's worse, the police are there, who regretfully inform him that his father has been killed. Terry is ridden with guilt and frustration since he wasn't home like he was supposed to be. The police tell Terry that the Jokers are the ones responsible for such heinous acts.
You've got to stop.
I should have been there. I could have helped him. I could have done something.
However, upon Terry's own investigation, he finds the information from his father's disk and is convinced that he has something to do with Powers Enterprises. He immediately goes back to Bruce and begs for his assistance. The first episode ends with Bruce reluctantly letting Terry in after trying his best to ignore him. Part 2 begins with Bruce finding out the information on the disk, revealing that Powers Enterprises are using Wayne Powers to create a lethal device that can completely destroy healthy nerve cells. Terry asks Bruce for his personal assistance, however he refuses and sends Terry away. Dang, it's kinda harsh. Once on the street, Terry's approached by Powers and Felix, who demand their disc back. But Terry swindles them and runs for his life. Later, Bruce realizes that his new bat suit that he never got the chance to wear was stolen. And you can probably guess who took it. The scene then cleverly cuts to Terry in the bat suit, eavesdropping on Powers and Felix, where it is then revealed that Felix did in fact kill his father. All of a sudden, Terry is detected on their security cameras, and a fight ensues. More chaos is added to the mix when Batman shows up demanding his suit back.
It's a fail-safe device. Paralyzes the suit, in case the wrong person gets into it.
He ends up being able to tell Terry of an escape route that he cleverly built while living there, and Terry manages to escape. Once away from the danger, the two continue to argue, but Terry eventually wins Bruce over with the reveal that he's doing it to catch his father's killer. Bruce never got the chance to catch his parents' murderer, and he bonds with Terry over their shared childhood trauma. A little while later, Terry anticipates Powers' arrival at a dock, where they were said to drop off their new technology, and a fight ensues. In the end, Terry is successful in sinking all the technology and Fix along with it, officially ending the life of the person who killed his father. The episode ends with Bruce personally coming to Terry's house and explaining to his mother that Terry saved him from a Joker's attack, and in thanks, he would like to offer him a part-time job. Meanwhile, Powers is undergoing chemical radiation therapy in order to counteract his own invention and ends up mutating and altering his body completely, causing him to become a translucent radioactive maniac. Looks kinda cool though, right? Derek Powers is still on the hunt. It's incredibly obvious to everyone in Gotham. His body is inadequate. However, after everything that he's been through, he's in dire need of a miracle. Enter Dr. Stephanie Lake, who claims she can make a body for him and put his brain inside a new and healthier specimen. Powers happily agrees. However, Dr. Lake claims that she needs to practice on somebody first before committing to being able to do the procedure. They choose Mr. Freeze's dismembered head that has been frozen inside of Wayne Enterprises for nearly 50 years now, because that sounds like a great idea. Once inside a new body, he goes by Fries, since his real name back in the day was Dr. Victor Fries, and becomes aware of all the damage he has caused while he was alive. He decides to make an organization to hopefully help those who he has wronged in the past. Fries quickly realizes, however, that he's extremely hot and uncomfortable in his new body, and begins to have difficulties quickly. Dr. Lake tells him that she could potentially help by literally taking out his organs and doing experiments on him, which infuriates him. He leaves, hell-bent on revenge, which greatly concerns Bruce.
Freeze! How?
It's something I've kept in cold storage.
Everything around them turns to ice, including Powers. After some brief arguing between Batman and Mr. Freeze, Powers charges up his radioactive abilities.
And who are you, Sunshine?
Blight will do.
And decides to call himself Blight. He melts through the ice and greatly injures Mr. Freeze as well. And so in return, Freeze blasts him into a nearby pond. Batman approaches Mr. Freeze, trying to save him from the grave injuries that he suffered. However, he makes an ice wall between them. Batman evacuates the building before it explodes. Heroes begins with us learning of a new superhero group that just arrived in town, called the Terrific Trio. They're said to be genetically mutated scientists whose body changed after a lab experiment gone wrong, who now choose to fight crime. You know, that kinda reminds me of the Fantastic Four. Terry's excited about this, as he may have some more free time on his hands. However, Bruce is skeptical at best. Magma, one of the members of the trio, expresses his disliking of his new body, after being screamed at by a kid in fear after he had just saved the boy. He also expresses that not only does he look like a freak, but his new body makes it nearly impossible for him to enjoy simple pleasures in life. Dr. Hodges, a friend of the trio, the one who's able to form them into the creatures they are, then does a DNA scan of the trio, and finds some bad results saying that they are unstable. Later in the episode, a general from the government appears and frustratingly explains to Dr. Hodges that when the chemical lab explosion happened, he discovered that eventually, the trio would become dangerously psychotic as a result of the mutation, which is something they had previously discussed, and yet he had continuously been in denial about. Sure enough, a fight breaks out.
It's General Norton. We've been double-crossed.
And the trio threatens to kill themselves and everyone around them.
Then you knew all along.
Yes.
That's why you weren't there that night.
Batman appears to save the day, and inevitably has to put the trio to rest, shunning Dr. Hodges and the cruel crimes that he's committed. We meet the Royal Flush Gang in this episode, as it begins with people dressed up as different playing cards terrorizing a boat.
People dressed up like playing cards.
Did you say playing cards?
Batman arrives on scene given the commotion, but is forced to let the gang go after they threaten to kill everybody who is in attendance. Bruce is dumbfounded by the situation, and is upset with Terry because instead of listening to Bruce and coming back to the Batcave to further understand and get to know their enemies, he leaves due to having other plans. Terry is then seen back at the nightclub, where he had met with his girlfriend Dana before. However, she's frustrated with him for always being late and putting his work above her. She breaks things off, or more rather tells him that they need to take a break. This causes Terry to go outside. Distraught, all of a sudden, a blonde stranger approaches him. Apparently, she'd been watching from the sidelines all night and talked to Terry about the situation. They get to know each other, and Terry finds out that this girl moves around a lot because of her family's profession, meaning she constantly loses people and friends because of her sudden movement. And then suddenly, the blonde girl kisses him. He eventually figures out her name, Melanie Walker, and they plan to meet up soon. Terry returns to the Batcave to find a mildly annoyed Bruce telling him they still have to figure out where the Flush Gang went and what their next move is. Terry is convinced that their appearance was a one-time thing. However, Batman reveals that he believes that it's actually a family of villains. I'm sure you can see where this is headed. The episode then cuts to the Flush Gang's perspective, where it's revealed that the King has an ongoing grudge against Batman, and promises that his frustrations will be dealt with. And you guessed it, Melanie Walker comes into the picture revealing herself to be 10. Later, the Flush Gang are causing chaos again, and Batman is sent to stop them. After a grueling battle, Terry and Melanie meet up and have their little date, where Melanie admits that her family may be moving again soon. Terry is upset by this, but asks her to meet him again the next night as well. That day, Melanie's mom has a talk with her about her sudden lack of attention, to which Melanie confesses that she's been obsessing over some boy. Her mother tells her that it would be stupid to choose a boy over their family and their life's work, and says that she shouldn't see him again. And so, Melanie calls Terry and tells him the bad news.
There's nothing wrong. Nothing. Goodbye, Terry.
This upsets Terry so much that he puts on the batsuit and tracks her phone in order to see what's going on. That's major stalker behavior. Upon entering her house, he gets hit with a trick card that blows up in his face because, yeah, Batman just waltzed up to a home with a Royal Flush Gang. Of course that happened. A fight ensues, and 10 has to choose between helping Batman and running away to some boy or helping her father. She chooses her father, and is labeled a villain along with the rest of the family once the police arrive. Terry becomes aware of 10's true identity and has a heart-to-heart with Bruce about love, to which he makes Terry feel better after telling him about his relationship with Catwoman. Spellbound starts off with us being introduced to Spellbinder, a villain that seems to use his magic eye to hypnotize his victims and make them commit crimes in his favor without their knowledge. It begins with a popular girl at Terry's school claiming she had no idea that she was stealing one of her father's precious statues. Nobody thinks much of it, as they think she may just have psychological problems. However, Terry isn't convinced. Later, it's seen that another innocent bystander commits yet another crime, and is yet again convinced that someone made him do it. Terry and Bruce actually lock in as they realize that there is a legitimate threat at hand, not just a bunch of crazy people. The episode then cuts to Terry at a wedding for a friend's mom, when suddenly the bride starts screaming in panic, claiming that a swarm of bugs is attacking her.
Honey, don't!
She ends up taking off her necklace, thinking that it's full of bugs too, and Spellbinder is seen grabbing it. He manages to take it, however, Terry chases after him, having his own hallucinations as well. The next day, Terry is forced to go to a meeting with Billings, the school psychologist. Billings explains to Terry that he may be hallucinating because of the loss of his father and the responsibilities of his newfound job at Wayne Manor. The next day, Terry is seen sneaking into Wayne Manor, trying to steal things. Terry snaps out of it, and a battle ensues, resulting in them reprimanding Spellbinder.
While their coddling parents paid their garbage men more than me.
Turns out that he's Billings. He's an underpaid school psychologist that decided he'd hypnotize the rich families he serves in order to receive the payment he feels he actually deserves. which, in this economy, is low-key valid. This episode begins with us seeing an unfortunate guy named Aaron talking to an imprisoned Ink, a supervillain who has been trapped in ice.
Even if they don't pay me what I'm worth, you listen to me.
He gets in trouble with his boss for talking to her so much, so they fire him. In retaliation, he unfreezes her and watches the chaos unfold from the comfort of his own home. Ink arrives and tells him that she won't reveal any of the embarrassing secrets he told her if he helps her in any way he can, and he agrees. But it's obvious that he's agreeing because he likes her, not because she could reveal his secrets. Anyway, during her escape, she destroys Mr. Freeze's ice gun that Terry brought as Batman to try and stop her, leaving her to be able to run rampant through the city.
You're beautiful.
Wow.
The episode then cuts to Aaron begging Ink to turn him into a shapeshifter like her, to which she agrees. However, when she eventually does inject him, she just turns him into a blob, causing him to be rendered useless and pathetic. Meanwhile, Batman attempts to confront Ink, but is captured instead and taken to a sort of arena. He sends out an SOS message to Bruce, who is discovered by Ink. She tells him exactly where they are, but tells him to come by himself. Once there, he's forced to fight, wearing one of his old bat suits, which is innately dangerous for his health, but just look at him go. Aaron, frustrated that he's just a blob, causes chaos in his own way, and ends up allowing Terry to escape during his shenanigans. In the end, Ink is reprimanded, and Aaron is put under arrest with his own version of himself in charge of watching him in his prison. Fortunately for her, though, she's being monitored, so a situation like Aaron's could never happen to her. Season 1 ends with a banger. Literally. Begins with us seeing Derek Powers, aka Blight, struggling yet again to find a valid set of skin for his ever-radiating body. Derek is then seen talking with his son Paxton about taking over lead chairman of their company.
Paxton, Powers, go home! No more sludge in our river!
And when this is proposed to the board of directors, they get lots of objections from the public. It goes so far as to dump dead fish and bad water all over the board meeting desk, causing Derek to go haywire and burst into Blight due to his frustration. Bruce is flabbergasted by this, and slightly annoyed as this means Terry's responsible for his transformation, thus making their beef much more personal than it needs to be. After that whole public revelation fiasco, Paxton takes over his father's place, since he's literally, well, a glowy monster. Later, Paxton reaches out to Batman for assistance in capturing his father, and Batman agrees. Apparently, according to Paxton, his father would be hiding where no public could ever find him, such as a submarine. Batman eventually sees his assistant boarding said submarine. However, once found, Paxton tries to literally kill him. Blight appears in full force and melts the submarine to the point of sinking.
Paxton! Terry, what's going on in there?
Paxton, Powers, and some others are saved from the submarine, but Blaine was said to have been seen floating down to the bottom of the ocean. The episode ends with Batman warning Paxton of his father's return, while Paxton takes over the Enterprise for himself. Season 2 starts to get juicy with Hidden Agenda. The episode begins with us seeing the gang of Jokers wreaking havoc throughout the city, yet again, but with a twist. The head Joker is seen treating the others with more violence than usual, enough to make them feel somewhat uncomfortable with his leadership. The show then cuts to Terry's high school where their GAT scores are finally in. It's like SAT, but not copyrighted. We're introduced to Max, who so happened to get the first place score, landing her the head running position for valedictorian. After finding out about their scores, Max announces to everyone that she's going to be making a program dedicated to finding out Batman's secret identity, which worries Terry.
If it is a guy.
He's a guy, and he's connected to our school. I'm sure of it.
During all of this, a boy named Carter got second and is seen later that evening arguing with his mother about said grade. Carter storms off after their argument and then does what any sane person would normally do, which is putting on makeup and a clown outfit. Yep, this guy is the Joker leader we saw earlier in the episode. He takes the Jokers to the school in hopes of deleting Max's score records, but he's denied access, leaving him to graffiti the area instead. The next day, Max finds out that the leader of the Jokers must be a fellow student targeting her, as she finds a booby trap in her locker. Later in the episode, her machine that's supposed to figure out who Batman is came back with only 6 different names being options, one of them being Terry.
Care to explain what you're doing here?
Actually, no.
Meanwhile, Terry realizes that the Jokers are targeting her, and so he approaches her and warns her to back off on the Batman investigation, thinking that that's why she's getting targeted. Max feels as though Terry doesn't want her to find out about this secret, so she messages him saying to meet her in the park. However, once there, she's bombarded by the Jokers instead. Batman arrives, and there's a brief brawl that ends in Max kicking Carter into a fountain, which washes off his face paint, revealing his true identity. The episode ends with Max revealing that she knows Terry is Batman. However, his secret is safe with her, and that he's more than welcome to confide in her if ever he needs somebody to talk to. This later episode of Season 2 begins with us getting another glimpse into the life of Ten. She's seen trying to steal money from what seems to be a high-stakes poker game. However, her plan goes haywire, and Batman ends up showing up to save the day, letting them both escape. Melanie shows up to his house and explains that her father has been kidnapped by the Jokers and held for ransom, which is why she was trying to steal the money in the first place. Dana then calls Terry, reminding her of their study date, even though it's been clear for a while now that Terry is uninterested in her, and he declines, as he wants to help Melanie. Oh, and he and her end up kissing, presumably sealing the deal.
There's an old saying, once burned, twice shy. Is that what you're feeling now?
Terry tells Melanie of Dana and the relationship, but to Melanie, it doesn't matter. In fact, Terry just straight up confesses he still has feelings for her not too long after. Well,
With this kind of lying, it's got to be more than just a friend.
Wish I knew.
Terry attempts to persuade Melanie to not try stealing from the poker game again, to which she agrees at first, but they're soon found out by the Jokers. Ten abandons Terry to go back to the game and steal the money, but once she returns, she finds no sign of the Jokers, only her parents claiming that the whole thing was a setup to see the lengths she would go to for her family.
All I've ever been to you is an accomplice, never a daughter.
Terry soon arrives and is reprimanded by not only the Flush family, but also the very angry, very scary members that were attending the game whose money was stolen. The members start shooting up the area, leaving Batman time to escape. Thankfully, he had already called the police, and everyone was captured and put under arrest. The episode ends with him meeting up with Dana and moving on from Melanie and the distraction that she was causing him. However, during all of this, Ten had given Terry a note, but he never ended up reading it, opting instead to just throw it away. Fair enough, but I mean, hey, now we're all wondering what was on that note. This interesting episode raises concerns against Batman and his methods, and nearly gets everyone in trouble. It all begins with the commissioner of the police, Barbara, who just so happens to be the legend Batgirl, who helped Bruce for many years. Later in life, she followed in her father's footsteps and became leader of the police force, but I digress. She raises concerns with Bruce about Terry's background and voices a general dislike for the new Batman, as she's worried that he's not the best option. Bruce reassures her that everything is fine. However, she warns him that the next mess-up she'd like Terry to be put away. This alarms Bruce, as it not only reveals his protege's secret identity, but would mean revealing Bruce as the original Batman as well. Later in the episode, Barbara is throwing a celebration which inevitably gets interrupted by a villain named Mad Stan.
Go ahead, Commissioner. Make your call. I've wired the whole ballroom.
Terry, as Batman, goes to handle business, with Barbara following him, assuming that he's going to mess up. Barbara then witnesses Terry using one of Mad Stan's bombs and banging it on his head not once, but twice, causing him to die, after which Batman is nowhere to be found. Barbara is furious and emphasizes to Bruce that when Terry is found, he will be put away for murder. Bruce calls Terry and asks for his side of the story, to which Terry explains that he most certainly did not kill Mad Stan, he simply knocked him out and left. Bruce goes undercover and watches the tapes himself, and finds that the tape cuts out right when he said events are supposed to occur. This leads Bruce to believe that he's been set up, and he informs Terry of this. Later in the episode, Terry is being caught by the police. However, he notices something and uses one of his batarangs to reveal Spellbinder. Yeah, he's back. Spellbinder then reveals that it was so easy to confuse Barbara, since she was more than ready to get Batman in trouble. In the end, though, Barbara profusely apologizes to Terry and Bruce, and even awards Terry with a Civic Service award. This next episode is called Sneak Peek, so let me go ahead and give you all a sneak peek.
I love this.
Alright, anyway. The episode begins with Terry emphasizing to his mother how much he loves the show The Inside Peek, where this guy named Peek reveals crazy inside scoop stories about people around Gotham City. However, during a brawl later that day, Terry notices a large blob of a man being able to walk through walls and disappear seemingly out of plain sight very easily. After the brawl, it's seen that the said blob man plants a camera in the Batmobile. Terry doesn't realize this and heads all the way to the Batcave, talking to Bruce and even taking off his mask. The next day, it's revealed that Peek is going to reveal Batman's secret to the world, and Terry starts completely wigging out. Him and Bruce talk it over, and Bruce explains that the only person who would know how to fade through walls like this was a scientist who worked for Wayne Enterprises a long time ago, as he specialized in things of that matter. However, he died many years ago. Bruce and Terry head to Peek's place to hopefully talk things out with him. However, once they're there, they realize that Peek won't budge, and definitely plans on spilling the beans.
I'm Batman.
Throughout this episode and during this conversion, Peek is seen having crazy bad stomach problems, which are shown by him having his entire abdomen become see-through. Talk about an empty stomach. I'm sorry. He begs Bruce to let him use Wayne's technology in order to figure out a cure, to which Bruce confronts him about his scientist friend who died. Peek claims that they had an interview together, which is when he found out the initial information about passing through atoms. However, Bruce essentially scoffs in his face, saying that he would never have an interview with a piece of scum like Peek. Peek then slyly mentions that he has other ways of information, which is when Bruce realizes that Peek was the one who started the fire that killed his scientist, and then stole his files in order to find out more about the technology. This enrages Bruce, and they fight, ending with Peek pulling a gun on him. Thanks to his powers, though, the gun phases through his hands and falls to the ground. Then directly after this, he falls through every floor of the building and eventually starts falling through the crust of the earth. That has gotta be torture. The last episode of Season 2 begins with Terry going missing in a subway after going on a date with Dana. I'd go missing too if I had someone telling me my work is getting in the way of our relationship every single time we're together. Anyway, he goes into the subway and never comes out, which causes his friends and family to become worried and inevitably causes Bruce to get so worried that he actually drives to Max's house to ask what's going on.
What happened?
There was a cave-in, obviously.
The show then cuts to Terry as Batman in what looks to be an underground type of area with a little boy trying to get him back to the surface. Batman is led by the boy, which he soon learns is the name Dak. Eventually, they find a spot on the wall that sounds hollow on the outside, so Batman decides to detonate it. A small opening appears in the ceiling, only big enough for Dak to squeeze through. However, once at the surface, he runs smack dab right into Shriek, this other villain with shockwave abilities, who was alerted of their location after the explosion occurred. Dak accidentally reveals to Shriek that Batman is stuck, and the two go down in the holes to find him. Dak, being a loyal king, lies to Shriek and points him to a part of the wall that is covered in condensation, saying that Batman is somewhere around that area in the tunnels. Shriek breaks the wall down, where a flood of water rushes into the tunnel, separating the two. Meanwhile, Bruce and Max have been on their own little rescue mission, and they end up fighting with the T's, a popular gang group, and figuring out that Terry was last seen in the subway. Bruce ends up tricking Max into getting caught by the police near the wrecked ground, mostly because he's worried about her being involved, but I think it's because he wanted to be the one to save the day. Once down there, he interferes with Shriek, getting his hands on Batman, defeating him in the process. The episode ends with everybody going home and having a good night's rest, or as good as one can after being smothered in strained sewer water and fighting villains all night.
Well, now it all makes sense. Huh? You've started making your bed.
Season 3 begins with the return of our favorite gang. You guessed it, the Royal Flush. This time they're seen stealing museum items and getting captured and hurt in the process. The king is seen handing off the merchandise to none other than the infamous Paxton Powers, who only gives him a portion of the amount they agreed upon due to the poor shape the materials were in.
Still, I suppose you should get something for your trouble?
The queen is furious with the king for even working with such scum, so to make up for his lack of manliness and to please his woman, the king decides to kidnap Paxton and hold him for ransom. Paxton reveals that he doesn't have much money. However, if they kill Bruce, then he will be able to obtain all his company assets and reward the Flush family with millions, to which the king accepts. This doesn't go well for him, however, as Bruce and Batman battle him and easily win. However, during the battle, the king leaves the queen to die, and also steals all the money for himself, while also having another mistress on the side, and plans on completely abandoning the entire family.
No, my dear, I could explain.
This episode ends with us witnessing Melanie bail out her brother Jack from jail and offering him a job at her new restaurant, as she's been trying to live a more honest life ever since her time with the gang, to which he happily agrees. Although this episode isn't super important to the overall timeline, I feel as though it's important for Terry's backstory. In an earlier episode, we mentioned how Barbara was unimpressed by Terry's track record, and in Big Time, we find out that he was merely an 18-year-old boy following along with his older friend. His friend Charlie had been dealing with family issues and decided to do a heist in order to prove himself to a bigger gang. However, it didn't go as planned, and the two got caught. Charlie got jailed for 3 years as he was tried as an adult, but because Terry wasn't of age, he only got 3 months in juvie. That's still really tough. This later two-part episode begins with Terry running into the one, the only, Superman. The two go back to the Batcave together, and once there, Superman confesses that he wants to add Terry onto the Justice League team as the new Batman.
I think it's time your protege joined the Justice League.
The Justice League?
Bruce lets Terry make the decision, to which he happily agrees. However, once there, he's greeted with coldness and animosity.
Batman was one of the League's founding members.
The real Batman, not this pointy-eared punk.
Superman ends up confessing to Terry that he believes there's a traitor among the group, as one of their members, Micron, got injured earlier that week, in a way in which only a member would be able to do. Terry tries his best to monitor the League members when all of a sudden, the camera cuts out in Aquagirl's training area. Terry rushes to the scene, and she's eventually saved from her malfunctioning tank. However, the other members are upset with Terry not calling them to help, even though he's never been a part of the team before. Later in the episode, this guy, Warhawk, is killed due to a missile strike that Terry himself witnesses. When the League shows up to see the damage that has been caused, they immediately begin to blame Terry, until Superman arrives and tells them to back off. Terry tells Bruce what happened, so he checks the footage from the Batmobile and finds that the missile exploded due to Superman's heat vision, meaning Superman is the traitor. Bruce gives Terry his secret stash of kryptonite that Superman had gifted him years ago, and instructs him to use it to stop Superman if it comes down to that. Part 2 begins with Batman showing the rest of the Justice League the footage that Bruce found. However, certain members don't believe him, and it gets so elevated that a fight breaks out. And coincidentally, none other than Warhawk re-enters the picture. He confirms that he was also suspicious of Superman, so he sent up a remote-controlled suit, which is what they saw get blasted.
I told him not to tag along, but he disobeyed. I like that.
The group then goes off to confront Superman, who at first denies knowing anything. However, once they touch his chest, a large eye opens up in the middle, and he's revealed to be covered by some sort of alien-like creature. After a brief struggle with the alien, they disengage. They approach Bruce, wondering where Superman's Fortress of Solitude is, in hopes to find the real Superman there waiting for them. However, after arriving at the fortress, they find yet another alien attachment. Thanks to Aquagirl's powers, being able to talk with water creatures, the League learned the true story of this alien. Long ago, a preserver set out to kidnap Superman, as he was the owner of a zoo full of exotic and rare creatures. The preserver wanted Superman due to him being the last Kryptonian. However, Superman was able to escape and kill the preserver, and feeling bad for every other creature in the zoo, he decided to take them all in. Soon after this, the star creature leaped into Superman's face to gain control of his body, and has allegedly been controlling him for years. Suddenly, a secret door is unlocked, and it's revealed that there are crazy amounts of the star creatures waiting in a giant pool of water. Turns out they've been breeding for a long time, in order to gain numbers to start taking over the world. Several star creatures leap out and latch onto League members, with each member being taken control of except for Batman, who's able to zap them away with his Batsuit. He then flees the area in the Batmobile and alerts Bruce of the situation, who advises that he tell the government. However, he doesn't want the members of the League to die due to the creatures, so he declines.
Love that
The star creatures catch up and a fight ensues, narrowly allowing victory for the League. They offer Terry an official spot on their team. However, he declines, mostly because of how they've been treating him literally the entire time. This two-parter ends with Terry realizing he's not that different from the original Batman, and that he's realized he'd prefer working mostly by himself rather than with the League. Also, in case you were wondering, yes, the Star Things were Starro, the villain of the very first Justice League comic issue. This next two-parter begins with Terry getting his ass absolutely handed to him.
Get up, let's go.
And being told by Bruce to go study with an old martial arts friend of his in her dojo. Once there, Terry begins to learn his own weaknesses and begins to get stronger. While heading home one day, he witnesses a man get shot at and stolen from a group called Cobra. Terry goes to the Batcave and tells Batman of what he saw. And once they do some research, it's found that the man is actually a paleontologist. This confuses the two, so they decide to do some further digging. Get it? It's paleontology. I'm done. I promise. The next day, Terry and Max go to the museum, and after snooping around, they find that Cobra was interested in recovering stolen dinosaur DNA. Terry then meets Xander, a guy that has been seen escorted to a limo earlier that day after training. Xander tells Terry that he's never had pizza.
Pizza? I've heard of it.
You're kidding, right?
Prompting Terry to invite him to go get some at their local arcade with Max. They go, and Xander seemingly has a decent time. He gets beaten by Max at an arcade game and demands a rematch, but right after this, a gang of jokers arrives and Xander nearly kills them all. His entourage appear and escort him out of the building before any more damage can be done. The next day, Terry's teacher explains that because of his behavior, Xander was kicked out of her program and will no longer be practicing with them. Later, the episode cuts to a scene of reptilian-like men breathing in crazy fumes, making them wail out in pain, seemingly being experimented on by none other than Xander, revealing that he's part of the Cobra members. The show then cuts to Xander being seen kidnapping Max, but not before she calls Terry to alert him of the situation. Terry tries his best to save her. However, he's reprimanded and hurt badly. Despite his injuries, Terry finds out where Max is located and sets out to find her. The episode then cuts to her waking up in a fancy bed with girl servants telling her that she's in charge of them now. This confuses her and she resists the situation, before she's then brought to Xander by a scary reptilian man. Once there, Xander blesses her with the knowledge of what's going on. Essentially, Xander's decided to take dinosaur DNA and splice it with that of a human in order to make them the perfect species. Why lizard things? Apparently it's because they have the one thing that humans once lacked: adaptability, and the ability to evolve into different forms. He then plans on using a thermal bomb in order to raise Earth's temperatures to a suitable habitat for the new creatures, killing off any humans that refuse to transform. This scares Max, and she refuses to be spliced, even though that will inevitably mean her death. Meanwhile, Batman sneaks in and a fight ensues.
I failed you, Xander. I thought I could put you on the right path.
The episode ends with their martial arts teacher arriving and sacrificing herself to save the world due to her failing Xander, and potentially not being able to prevent the end of the world as they know it. The last episode is a heartfelt one. It's essentially a retelling of one of Terry's memories. After Max brings up that he should probably just tell people close to him his true identity, he gets defensive, as if his friends know his identity, then they're all going to be in danger too. He then tells a story of a little boy who once saw his face.
I wasn't scared, not of Batman. He's just a guy like everybody else.
And was then kidnapped and almost thrown into a snake pit. However, Terry's convinced that the kid doesn't actually remember his face, as the kid has grown up a bit now and never looks at him funny. The episode ends with the kid turning and watching Terry walk away with Max with a knowing look on his face, meaning that he does remember who Batman is. He just chose to keep it a secret. The return of the Joker begins right after our last finale and begins with Terry getting bitten by a spliced Joker during his last debacle regarding the Joker stealing advanced technology. Something they aren't known for doing, as they're commonly found messing with commoners and city subways and alleys, so it's kind of a turn of form for them. Terry is slightly worried about his bite, but decides to go to a nightclub with Dana since she was excited about it. And we all know how Dana can be. Unfortunately for Terry, his bite is acting almost as a roofie, as he isn't coherent, and he continues talking to wrong girls on accident when he's trying to talk to Dana. She eventually realizes that something isn't right. The show then cuts to the Jokers returning to their lair. Bonk, one of the lead Jokers, starts getting frustrated with their new leader since he's frustrated with their lack of materials. He claims that he never even told them what they were stealing for, as they normally steal for money or other valuable items. The shadowed leader then pulls a gun on Bonk, and at first, it seems to be just a threat as confetti flies out of the gun, but Bonk is soon after hit with an actual spear that comes from the gun. The other Jokers bow down in submission, and it's revealed that their new leader is the Joker. The movie then cuts to Bruce and Terry at the celebration where Bruce takes back over his enterprise. Suddenly, the Joker and the Jokers arrive wreaking havoc. Terry is forced to save most of the civilians instead of pursuing the Joker, and Bruce is left dumbfounded as his formidable foe is supposed to be dead. Bruce is so put off by the Joker still being alive and causing more chaos in Gotham that he basically bullies Terry into giving back the Batsuit and not continuing his journey as Batman.
I'm not working for Mr. Wayne anymore.
Terry goes to Barbara, Batwoman, for advice, but she too doesn't have anything to say to Terry except to listen to Bruce. It's also shown that the old Robin, Tim Drake, also sees the news of the Joker returning and he gets goosebumps. Terry frustratingly returns the suit and decides to go clubbing with Dana, thinking that he now has a lot of time on his hands. However, once there, two girls approach him, Dee Dee, Jokers under the Joker's control. They separate Terry from Dana, and another member attempts to kidnap her while he isn't paying attention. Terry soon realizes and is able to get Dana, but not after she's hurt in some sort of way. She's then rushed to the hospital.
Hello, Batman.
After the attack, Terry calls Bruce with no response, leaving him no choice but to rush to the scene, assuming that something terrible must have happened. Once there, he finds the words, "Ha ha ha," written in graffiti, and he assumes the worst, until he finds Bruce convulsing on the floor, laughing almost to death. Thankfully, before the attack, Bruce had been perfecting his cure for Joker venom. Terry finds this and injects the old man, only for him to finally stop laughing and pass out in pure exhaustion. Barbara arrives, tending to Batman, and after being asked multiple times, she finally gives in and tells him the story. Long ago, the Joker would cause chaos all the time, And it got to the point where one day, Batman's sidekick Tim went missing. Him and Batwoman searched all throughout Gotham. And eventually, the Joker met up with him and told him the story of how he captured Tim and tortured him into becoming Joker Jr. Apparently, he and Harley had wanted a child for a while, but they didn't want to bear one themselves. And since Batman always had a few spare, they decided to take one of his. The Joker instructed Tim to kill Batman, but in a last-ditch effort, he turns and shoots the Joker himself with a bang gun instead.
Tim, it's Barbara. Can you hear me?
During this battle, Harley falls off of a cliff, even though Batwoman did try to save her. Anyway, the Joker's presumed dead, and Tim is distraught. They bury the Joker and put Tim in extensive therapy where he eventually grew up and became a father of his own. After hearing the story, Terry investigates Tim, but nothing comes from it, as he's traumatized after being Batman's sidekick. Terry eventually turns to Jordan Price. However, while he was found guilty for helping the Joker steal technology, in turn for them trying harder to kill Bruce, he got arrested, there was no evidence of him having any contact with the real Joker. Seemingly at a loss of a lead, Terry talks to a newly awakened Bruce, who also concludes that it just has to be Tim, as the Joker did in fact hurt the Robin's suit more than anything else, and also the technology that they keep stealing could be used by Tim now that he's an engineer and a seemingly newly found man. He has the capability to potentially hijack a military defense satellite, which is exactly what he's been doing. After approaching Tim again, it's revealed by the Joker that Tim has in fact been helping him and has turned back to his side. While talking to Tim, his voice suddenly changes to the Joker, and it's revealed that he is the Joker. He then tells the two that when he was torturing Tim, he implanted a microchip into his head that would allow the Joker to live on after his death, slowly being able to take over Tim's body and mind over many years. A battle ensues in which Terry comes out victorious after taunting the Joker upon realizing that getting under his skin is really easy, and not something the old Batman did very often, as they didn't have much small talk. It ends with Bruce reconciling with Batwoman and the real Tim. It's also revealed that the Dee twins are the granddaughters of Harley Quinn, meaning she did in fact not die after falling off of a cliff.
Break her grandmother's heart!
Bruce looks to Terry with love and admiration, proudly handing him the title of Batman and officially allowing him his old position. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this masterpiece of a show.
So that was the entire story of Batman Beyond in 41 minutes. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Batman Beyond succeeds by boldly shifting the classic dark vigilante formula into a high-tech cyberpunk future, pairing a brash teenage hero named Terry McGinnis with an elderly, cynical Bruce Wayne. This fresh dynamic reinvents the mythology without losing the gritty soul of the original series. I must say, I'm so impressed with this series. It is in my top 10 favorite series of all time. I absolutely love it. My top 5 favorite villains are Blight or Paxton Powers, Spellbinder, Ink, Shriek, and the Joker. Obviously, Batman Beyond, The Return of the Joker. Seriously, if you haven't watched this series yet, do yourself a favor and check it out, because you will not be disappointed. And a word of wisdom for today. Just like Batman tries to help everybody, why don't you help somebody? Your help can save lives. Have a blessed day further, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.